The van rattled over the broken road, every bump sending a dull jolt through my legs. I kept my hands folded in my lap, fingertips brushing against the cold metal plate hidden under my robe. The weight of it pressed into my ribs, heavy but comforting, a reminder of the purpose I had trained for. We were less than an hour from the target, a church in the middle of a shattered city. A place where Christians had gathered, thinking stone walls and stained glass could protect them. In my mind, I wasn't driving toward death. I was driving toward my wedding, the day the promise would finally be fulfilled. 72 virgins, untouched and radiant, waiting for me in the gardens of Jannah. Rivers of milk and honey. Palaces built from light. The honor songs of the martyrs rising like incense into the sky. This was the dream I had clung to for years. The reward I was told would wipe away my sins, my fears, my insignificance. The other men in the van stayed silent. We didn't need words. We were bound by the same mission, the same oath. I kept my eyes on the dusty horizon, picturing the moment my name would be spoken in the halls of paradise. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was that before the sun set, I would meet the one I had been trained to hate, and nothing I believed about life, death, or God would survive that meeting. I was born in a small Iraqi border town, a place where the air itself seemed soaked in the call to prayer. From the moment I could walk, Islam wasn't just our religion, it was our law, our culture, our breath. My earliest memories are of my mother wrapping herself in layers of fabric before stepping outside, her voice always quiet in my father's presence. Of my father coming home from the mosque, speaking with the same certainty as the imam, as though their words were interchangeable. In our home there were no debates, no other perspectives. The West was a disease. Christians were corrupters of the earth, deceivers who had twisted God's message. We were taught they were not simply wrong, they were enemies of Allah. Every week, I sat on a thin carpet in a cramped religious classroom, memorizing verses from the Quran and reciting them back without a hint of doubt. Questions were dangerous. Curiosity was rebellion. The only correct posture was obedience. The mosque reinforced it. The marketplace whispered it. The very streets seemed to echo it. Life was divided into two camps, the faithful and the infidels. We were told that one day the faithful would rise, purify the world, and restore the glory of Islam. In our town, no one argued with that vision. No one dared. To believe differently was to stand alone, and in our world, being alone meant being nothing. So, I believed what I was told. I drank it in until it was part of me, until I couldn't tell where the truth ended and the lies began. By the time I reached my teenage years, I had mastered the outward appearance of a devout young Muslim. I prayed when I was told. I fasted when required. I spoke the expected words. But inside, I was hollow. Life felt like an endless loop, the same streets, the same sermons, the same faces. There was no spark, no joy. Only a creeping sense that I was invisible in my own story. I spent hours in dimly lit internet cafes, wandering through the digital world. I saw glimpses of Western life, music, sports, bright cities, but always filtered through the lens of propaganda. On our screens, the West was a playground of sin, drunkenness, greed, broken families, people without God. And yet, even through the propaganda, I saw something I couldn't explain. They seemed free. Not righteous but unchained. It gnawed at me, that difference, that distance between my life and theirs. I told myself they were lost, but in the quiet corners of my mind, I wondered if I was the one adrift. At home, I was just another son in a sea of suns, with no path, no purpose, nothing to set me apart. I longed for something, anything, that would make my existence matter. Something that would give my life weight and my death meaning. I didn't know it then, but that longing, that emptiness, was exactly the opening someone else would step into. Someone who would promise me glory, belonging, and a place in eternity, all in exchange for my life. And I would be ready to listen. It began with a single click. One night, in the flicker of an internet cafe screen, I stumbled onto a link buried deep in a political discussion thread. It read, "True Islam, the Final Battle." The page loaded into darkness. No banners, no advertisements. Just a series of cryptic links, each one pulling me further in. Images of war filled the screen. Mosques reduced to rubble, children crying in streets painted with dust and blood. Short clips of fighters smiling into the camera moments before they died. There were chat rooms too. Names that weren't real names. Flags from Iraq, Syria, Egypt, Somalia, even Europe. Every conversation was the same: anger at the West, outrage over occupied lands, a call to purify the earth. I lingered in the shadows of those rooms until one message appeared in my private inbox. "Are you ready to serve Allah with your life?" His username was Imam Khalid. I didn't know if he was really an imam or even where he lived. But his words were deliberate, measured, magnetic. He didn't push at first. He listened. I told him about my boredom, my emptiness, my longing for purpose. He told me I was chosen, not by accident but by divine will. Days turned into weeks. He sent me PDFs of religious texts, quoting verses and hadiths I had never heard in my local mosque. But they were always the same kind, the ones that spoke of victory through blood, of paradise for the martyr, of the duty to fight unbelievers. He stripped them from their context, stitching them into a single narrative. You want purpose? Kill for Allah and you will live forever. The promise became a drumbeat in my head. 72 virgins, rivers of honey, eternal honor. It wasn't poetry to me, it was the answer to the question I had been asking my whole life. What am I for? Khalid's voice in those late-night chats became louder than the voice of my father, my teachers, even my own thoughts. Every message closed with the same words: victory or paradise. I believed him. Completely. When Khalid finally said it was time, I didn't hesitate. He told me I was to join brothers in another country, men already preparing for operations. He sent instructions. No goodbyes, no explanations, no turning back. Before dawn, I left my home with a small bag and the clothes on my back. I told my mother I was going to a religious study program in the city. She kissed my forehead, prayed for my safety, and closed the door, not knowing she might never see me again. From there, everything moved in shadows. I was handed off between men I never saw twice. We followed smuggling routes across the border, goat trails through the hills, dried riverbeds that led to forgotten checkpoints. At each handover, I felt myself shedding the last pieces of my old life. By the third night, I arrived at the compound. High walls, narrow gates, the constant hum of generators. Inside, I found others like me, young men with eyes emptied of doubt and filled with fire. They came from Yemen, Sudan, Chechnya, even France. We didn't ask questions about each other's pasts. Our days were split in two. Mornings were for religious lectures. The same clipped verses, the same fevered promises of martyrdom, the same contempt for anyone who wasn't one of us. Afternoons were for training, disassembling rifles, wiring explosives, practicing ambush drills. One exercise burned itself into my memory, standing in a row, aiming at posters taped to wooden boards, photographs of churches, priests, and Christian families. The instructors told us, every bullet is a gift to Allah. By the end of the first month, the compound had erased my hesitation. We were told daily that obedience was greater than understanding. And I believed that too. It was just after morning prayers when my name was called. The commander's tone was flat, like he was announcing a change in the weather. "There's a church in the western quarter," he said. "Refugees inside. Mostly Christians. You'll take the vest." He slid a folded map across the table, his finger tapping a small black circle on the edge of the city. "By midday they'll be praying. Let them meet the God they worship." The men around him laughed. One leaned in, smirking. "Jesus won't save them." The others chuckled under their breath, as though it was an inside joke that had been told 1,000 times. I didn't laugh, not because I doubted the mission but because the gravity of it settled heavy in my chest. This wasn't a drill. This was the moment I had been preparing for since the first message from Khalid. The vest was heavier than I expected. Not just in weight but in meaning. It wasn't a weapon to me, it was a key. One pull of the trigger and I'd pass through the gate to paradise. The hours before departure felt strangely calm. The world outside was chaos, distant gunfire, the smell of smoke, the restless shuffle of fighters moving through the compound. But inside me there was quiet. I sat alone in my room, tracing the prayer beads between my fingers, whispering the verses I'd been told would speed my soul to heaven. I imagined the gardens of Jannah, the rivers of honey, the faces of the virgins promised to me. For the first time in years, I felt certain of my purpose. I believed I was chosen. We left just after dawn, 3 vehicles in a staggered line, our convoy blending in with the flow of battered trucks and carts on the road. Dust swirled behind us, turning the air into a pale haze. The city was still sleeping when we passed the last checkpoint. I kept my hands folded, fingers resting against the cool edge of the detonator hidden beneath my robe. Every bump in the road felt like a countdown. Then it happened. A sound like the sky tearing open, a roar that swallowed every other noise. The third vehicle vanished in a fireball, shrapnel spinning through the air like teeth. Before I could turn, the blast wave slammed into our van. The world folded in on itself. No more engine noise, no shouts, no gunfire, just silence. I was weightless, floating above twisted metal and black smoke. I saw my body below, burned, crumpled, eyes open but empty. The vest was still strapped across my chest, charred and useless. I should have felt pain, but there was nothing. Only the slow, dawning realization. I was dead. Something unseen began to pull me upward. Not wind, not gravity, something deeper, stronger, irresistible. The smoke and wreckage faded below, swallowed by distance. Ahead there was light. Not sunlight. Not fire. Something alive. It moved like it was breathing, yet it pressed against me like a tide. When it touched me, I felt exposed. Every thought, every deed, every hidden corner of my life lay bare. And then I heard it, a voice not loud but unshakable, speaking my name. Hassan. It wasn't a question. It was a summons. The sound of it went through me like lightning, yet without pain. It was authority wrapped in love, a combination I had never known. And then I saw him. Not the pale, weak figure I'd seen mocked in pamphlets. Not the defeated man hanging on a cross in cartoons my teachers had shown me. He stood in the light like a king, strong, unyielding, yet filled with a sorrow that cut deeper than any blade. His eyes, they didn't just look at me, they looked into me. Every sin, every lie, every moment of hate was there, reflected in his gaze. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I thought I knew what would come next, condemnation, rejection. But instead he said, "You believed a lie. But I have not come to condemn you. I have come to show you the truth." And in that moment, everything I thought I knew about God began to fall apart. He didn't speak right away. The silence itself felt heavy, as if every second was pressing deeper into my soul. Then he said it, not with anger but with an unshakable certainty. The promise of 72 virgins is a lie born from the enemy to destroy my children. The words landed like a blade cutting through the core of my belief. Everything I had trained for, everything I had been willing to die for, crumbled in a single breath. The light around us shifted, and suddenly I was seeing images, not memories but revelations. I saw imams with fire in their eyes, twisting scripture, slicing verses out of context like pieces from a weapon. I saw them stand before boys barely old enough to shave, speaking of glory and reward, while chains wrapped invisibly around their hearts. Each lie was deliberate, each promise a hook. Then the vision changed. I saw the church I had been sent to destroy. Not just the building, the people inside. Families kneeling together. Children clutching their parents' hands. An old man with a weathered Bible resting in his lap. I saw their lips moving in prayer. And then I saw me, walking through the door with the vest hidden beneath my robe. I saw the moment I would have pulled the trigger, the flash, the force, the silence that would follow. The floor was covered in bodies. The air was thick with dust and blood. A child's shoe lay beside a crushed hymnal. My knees gave way. I wanted to turn from it, but his voice anchored me. You were not fighting for God. You were fighting against him. The truth hit harder than the blast that had killed me. I hadn't been a soldier of Allah. I had been a weapon in the hands of his enemy, and I had almost carried out his plan. Without warning, the light dimmed. The warmth faded from the air. We were moving, not upward now but downward into a darkness that seemed to breathe. The first thing I heard was screaming. Endless, raw, hopeless screaming. Shapes emerged in the gloom, men in tattered robes, their skin burned and twisted, eyes wide with terror that never faded. Some still wore pieces of suicide vests. Their mouths cried out the same words over and over. Where is the paradise? Where are the virgins? The answers never came. And then I recognized them. Faces from the compound. Men I had trained beside, shared bread with. One was my roommate. Another had taught me to strip a rifle blindfolded. And then, my chest tightened, a childhood friend. His eyes met mine, filled with a pain that seemed to bleed from the soul itself. They reached toward me, their voices breaking. They lied to us. Don't follow them. Jesus stood beside me, his expression neither cruel nor indifferent, but deeply grieved. He said, You were not just killing bodies, you were sending souls here. The weight of it crushed me. I realized that my mission wasn't simply about ending lives, it was about delivering them into this place of endless separation. I couldn't breathe. The heat pressed against me like punishment, but it was the despair in their eyes that tore me apart. I wanted to flee, but there was nowhere to run from the truth. We stood in the shadows of that place, the screams still echoing. I couldn't lift my head. Then his voice cut through the darkness, steady and final. Go back. Warn them. At first, I didn't understand. Go back? To the world I had left? To the people who had trained me to kill? It felt impossible. But his gaze didn't waver. They will listen to you. You have seen what few have seen. Speak. Tell the truth. Tell them about me. The words were like a command and an invitation all at once. Before I could answer, everything shifted. The ground disappeared beneath me. The darkness dissolved into blinding light. I felt as if I was being pulled backward through a tunnel, faster and faster until, with a jolt, I hit something solid. My eyes snapped open to smoke and fire. The twisted frame of the truck surrounded me. My body ached, blood slick on my hands. The others were gone. I was alive. I crawled from the wreckage, my legs trembling, the air thick with the smell of burning metal. In the distance, voices shouted. Armed men were moving toward the road. I stumbled into the hills, every step driven by the memory of his command. Warn them. By nightfall, I reached a village half empty from the fighting. There, I met a small group of Christian aid workers, strangers who should have feared me but didn't. They took me in, hid me, and treated my wounds without a single question about who I had been. For 2 days, I stayed in the back room of a crumbling house as they prayed over me. On the third night, one man named Elias whispered, "We'll get you out." What followed was a blur, smuggling routes through the mountains, hiding under tarps in the backs of trucks, slipping past checkpoints under the cover of darkness. We crossed into another country, then another, until finally I reached a safe house in a place I had never seen before. There, I learned to read the Bible in secret. The words felt alive, each verse cutting away another piece of the lies I had carried for so long. In time, I gave my life to Christ completely. I was no longer a soldier of death. I was his. To my Muslim brothers still chasing the promise of jihad, I beg you, it's a lie. I saw where it leads. Not to gardens. Not to light. But to a fire that never dies and a sorrow you cannot escape. I believed what they told me. I memorized the verses they twisted. I carried the bomb. I almost pulled the trigger. And then I met the one they taught me to hate. Jesus Christ, alive, powerful, and full of a love I didn't deserve. He showed me the truth. He showed me what my mission would have done. And he saved me from it. To my Christian brothers and sisters, pray. Pray for the ones still trapped in the chains I once wore. Pray for the boys being told their only worth is to die. Pray for the imams who have never heard the real gospel. Your prayers are not powerless. I am proof. I was promised virgins for killing Christians. Instead, I met the risen Christ who died for me. I don't speak these words to stir hatred toward Muslims. I speak them because I love them. Because I know what it's like to be blind and think you see. The war they are fighting is not for God. It is against him. And the only victory is surrendering to the one who already won. His name is Jesus. He is calling your name.